So here's what I want to do with the review of Too Many Bones Undertow, because Too Many Bones has been a system that's been around for a while, 6 years. Too Many Bones came out in 2017, Undertow came out in 2018, and it's a system that a lot of people have talked about in extreme high regard, especially if you are in this hobby. If you are entrenched in the hobby, you likely have heard of chip theory games and Too Many Bones because of the system and the game, and also because of the premium nature of chip theory games products. They are more premium, I think, than any game in my collection, I would say. This would be the most premium experience. But with that premium experience comes a premium price tag. And so what I want to do with this video, I'll give a brief breakdown about what Undertow adds to the base game. And if you want to contemplate, maybe you only have the base game, so that way you can see if this is worth picking up and you haven't looked into it that much. So we're going to cover it from that point, and I also want to cover it specifically in this video because I want to look at if this is a good starting off point. Because of the premium nature of chip theory games' products, they're expensive. And so this is the least expensive way to get into the Too Many Bones system. And if you've been interested in the Too Many Bones system, I'm going to talk about the merits of getting into it in this way versus the base game or something else, right? But those are the general points that I want to cover. So this is your first time boning. Well, everybody has to have a first time. And this was my first time boning as well. I think that's the term, that's the official term that Chip Theory Games has requested me to use. I thought it was strange, but part of the reason why I had to refilm this video is because they said, no, you know what, not enough boning in there. We need more boning. And so I will attempt to oblige. They didn't say that. If this is your first time with Too Many Bones, let me explain how the game works. Let me do that with some examples. Here are my examples. Here's the general overview of Too Many Bones. The whole game will be played on a 4x4 grid. That's it. There's a lot that happens on this 4x4 grid, and Undertow actually adds in sort of a dual-layered, dual-sided map. One to represent land encounters and one to represent water encounters. That's something that Undertow brings that the original game doesn't bring. But all it is you're going to run around in this 4x4 map and go through a series of encounters. At the beginning of your game, you're going to pick a tyrant card. You're going to look through the different tyrants. These are the final bosses. You're going to look through the cards, figure out which one you want to pick. They each have a difficulty level, a length level, so to speak, and the amount of skill points you need or experience points you need to gather in order to be able to attempt to face this final boss. And they also have a day counter. This is your ticking clock. These are the maximum number of encounters you can spend trying to get the required number of experience points to be able to take on that final boss. You're going to randomize a deck of encounters, and then you're going to go through one by one, and it'll give you a choice. Do this and get this reward, or maybe do this harder thing and get this better reward. And depending upon how tough you feel, which in my case is never, but luckily we're playing pretend here, and sometimes I feel really tough in the Too Many Bones system and world, then you can choose which of those encounters you want to try and you want to attempt. Also, depending where it comes in the encounter order, because as the encounters progress, you have a little day tracker. You say, okay, I'm on day 3, so then I'm going to face a day 3 amount of baddies. You take your party and you times it by the days you're at, and that's the number of baddie points, which you will then put in, which are represented by these awesome chips. These little chips here, these baddies, which will then go on the battle mat. You'll take your character, you'll put a stack of health points under your character, you'll put them on the baddie mat, on the battle mat, you'll take the baddies, you'll take a stack of health under the baddies, you'll put them on their spot on the battle mat, you fight your encounter. You do this over and over until you get enough experience points to save the day. That's the overall structure of the game, but the exciting part, well, there's a lot of exciting parts, but one of the exciting parts is you get to choose your specialized character. You take your big mouse pad filled with holes of a character sheet, along with your character's big old cheat sheet of stuff, which will tell you what all of their skills do, and then on the back, what more of their skills do, and some beginner tips of how you might want to start your build if this is your first time playing. And the characters represent half of the fun of this game. You're going to be leveling up your stats throughout the encounters. Those are what you often get as reward, are skill points. And you can spend your skill points to upgrade these 4 base stats, or to get special skill dice that you can use pretty much just once an encounter. Once you unlock it, you can use it once on a roll, but then it's exhausted, and you can't use it until the next encounter. And so with these tech trees, you have multiple different pathways of things that you can develop, which then can tailor your experience throughout the game. Combine that tailored experience with the variability that you get of the different encounters and the variability that you get with the different baddies, because every baddie has a different keyword attached to it, which is referenced on this big old keyword sheet. And you'll then pull them out and say, oh, what does that do again? You'll say, ah, yes, we have bleed and hardy and stun and swap. And then you'll have to figure out how to navigate those dangerous abilities with your own skills so that you take out all of their health before they take out all of yours. The other great part about this game is that the system continues to progress. It's not, if you lose an encounter, you lose. If you lose an encounter, you just get less rewards or less flexibility moving forward. So you always want to win the encounter so you maximize your rewards. But if you lose an encounter, it's not the worst thing in the world. You just don't get the points that contribute towards you making it to the final boss, which I like. It gives that sense of failing forward and that forward progression, and you still have a chance to come out on top, even if you have a couple stumbles along the way. But that's the crux of the game. That's the crux of the game of what makes this game fun. What I like the best is figuring out how to use my specific skill points and figuring out how to navigate these specific characters. I find the battle mat system to be interesting and to be fun, but I like just getting my own cool stuff as the game progresses and getting to feel stronger and stronger as you go on, and more comfortable with your characters as you move forward. And that's really, really fun to me. The other thing that Undertow adds to that the base game doesn't have is the water encounter. So it adds in, if you can see on the mat, there'll be these 3 extra spaces on either side of the water board and on the land board, on the side and on the side. And when you're in the water, these represent fish. And so the fish stay on the outside of the map. And I actually really like this addition. I've played the base, I don't own the base Too Many Bones, but I've played the base Too Many Bones with a friend who really likes the system, who introduced me to the system actually. And I like the addition of these added spaces because it makes the board feel a little bit bigger. I think that's a really nice addition here when you're playing with those water baddies, because the board is larger and it makes the decision of how to use your dexterity stat, which can be used for either movement or rolling dice. So if I have 3 dexterity, I can either move 3 spaces or I can roll 3 dice. And what I've found often the game devolves into is you run into moving beside the baddie, and then you just got to roll your dice better than the other than the AI, really. And not that that's a bad thing. Actually, rolling the dice is one of the very fun aspects of the game. That's why you have all of these different custom dice for your characters. It's fun to roll and to stack up the hits and feel powerful. But in terms of like actual tactical maneuverability, I've never found there to be that many interesting decisions. And I think with the expansion of the map, I think that's one thing that Undertow really does well when you encounter those types of villains. So the fish and the mechs, they start out on the side. The mechs can move on the side if you're doing on the land side. The fish always stay in the water and have specific movement there. But I really like that aspect of it because I feel like it stretches the battle area just a little bit, and that's a really, really nice change. So that's one of the major differences in Undertow. Now let's talk about Undertow as a 2-player experience and your gateway into the Too Many Bones world. Let's be clear, this is still an expensive game. It's $100 on their site versus $150 for the Too Many Bones, and the real difference here is not with the amount of encounters or baddies or stuff that you get, but it's that this box only contains 2 characters and the base box contains 4 characters. Now the 2 characters in here are Duster, who also has a little pet wolf, who has a complexity of 1 in co-op and a complexity of 2, a difficulty of 2 in solo. It's nice that they put those difficulty levels. And then we have Stanza, who has a difficulty of 4 in co-op and a difficulty of 3 in solo. And so on the overlook here, you're like, okay, great. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4 difficulty, depending on how you're going to use this game. And Too Many Bones plays really well at a solo count. I think it plays really well at a 2-player count. I don't think I would want to play this game with more than 2 players, which is nice that this is just a 2-player experience, because you don't feel like you need to even add in that extra player count. Kind of guides you towards what I think is generally perceived as the best player count anyway. So that's really nice that this exists in this 2-player count. However, if this is your first introduction to Too Many Bones, I think you should be aware that these 2 characters play very differently. And this is a bit of an interesting one for me, because I was taught this game. I didn't have to spend the time clunking through the rule book and all the little fiddly bits, because there are a lot of fiddly bits in this system, especially what does every character do, setting everything up, marking the initiative, setting up the deck and the encounter deck at the beginning of the game. All those little steps that once you know how to do them, go by fairly quickly and easily, but if you're just learning, might feel like a bit of a grind to get through. So if I consider this as a 2-player experience for someone who's never played Too Many Bones before, I would caution approaching it in that light, because Duster is very easy to understand, and Stanza is one of the most complex characters that I think they've made. You can let me know in the comments if there's somebody more complex than Stanza, but there's a learning curve. There's such a learning curve that even when I went over to my friend Kevin's house to play this and the Automaton of Shale, we had a double feature and it was great. We did Automaton of Shale and then we played another round of Too Many Bones Undertow, because we just wanted to play more. And that's the mark of an awesome game. If after playing like a 3 to 4 hour game, we're like, hey, do you just want to do it again with different characters? I love that, but even he had heard tales of Stanza being very complex and advised me to play Duster both times so that we could get the second game underway. And I kind of agree with that. Stanza, the complexity difference between Duster and Stanza is very significant. And I think that's not great if you're having this as a 2-player experience and you're playing it new. I've never played before, you've never played before. Somebody is going to have a much more difficult time comprehending the ins and outs of the character than they already would have. When I played this, I introduced this game to my friend Zach as well, and we played, and I gave him Duster because I knew that was going to be easier to understand. Duster is a very simple sort of melee character. She's got a pet wolf that'll come out whenever she gets injured, and then you can move the wolf around, and you can put your skill points into either the wolf or into Duster and balance them out that way. And so Duster can like either tank up or get sneaky skills that will let her disappear into the woodwork and just let the wolf take over. It's a really fun balance of stuff that you can explore. But we both spent a good 10-15 minutes looking over the sheet, trying to comprehend what the different things were doing. And that first game, even though Duster is fairly simple to figure out, you're still going to have that figuring out process for the majority of that first game. And that was something that Zach remarked on. He wasn't a fan that he had to really just spend that time learning the character beforehand and couldn't jump in without wanting to know what everything kind of did. And so Stanza, when I was playing Stanza in that pairing, Stanza was way more complicated than Duster, and there's pros and cons to this, right? I liked figuring out what Stanza does. Once you know what Stanza does, I mean, perhaps I'm hyping it up a little bit, but it'll take some time to figure out. And once you figure it out, like anything, it's going to be a lot easier. Stanza's main flow is that she starts with a lutar, a little, a guitar, but a lutar, so that it's weird and zany for the Too Many Bones world. And you'll roll that dice, and that'll be the amount of focus that she has to play songs. And so all of the skills, all of your skill points are going to go into getting more songs and figuring out how you can up the focus so you can play more songs at different times and send other songs into vamping. And your focus will represent sort of how much you can progress in each of these songs, which get better and better as the turns go on. And so juggling that and figuring out how songs work, because they're completely unique to Stanza and nothing else really references it, was a bit of a learning curve as well. And so the downside here is if you have two people of the same sort of skill level in terms of comprehending rules and figuring things out, then if you're on that enjoy the lesser complexity end, one of you is going to be forced to be Stanza and have to deal with these added complications when you're already figuring out and working with the fiddly bits of Too Many Bones. Or on the other hand, Zach was getting jealous that all really he could do was very simple things, and I was there sitting in a corner raging on my lutar and screaming at everyone on the map and dealing damage to everybody, and then running over and playing a nice little healing song and healing someone else. And so he was thinking, oh man, but you're getting to do all these cool things, and my character feels a little bit more simplistic and was a little less enjoyable for him. I still really enjoyed playing Duster, but I also really enjoyed playing Stanza. I think both of these characters are very fun, but I'm approaching this from if you are purchasing this as your first foray into the Too Many Bones universe, I think you need to be aware that there is a very large gap between complexity levels, and I'm not sure that this then makes it the best way to enter the system. It's a tough thing to comment on, right? Because obviously they just wanted to make cool characters, and if you have the other sort of basic characters in the main game, which play a little bit more simply, I think, I've only seen a few of them, you want to get characters that are new and different and fun, and I think both of these characters are really fun. It's just that comment about complexity that I've been going on and on and on about that I think has landed by now that I would be aware of. Basically, lots of fiddly stuff that it would be great to not have to worry about all the even more fiddly stuff until you figured out the initial fiddly stuff that the game kind of brings to you. And I say fiddly stuff, but it's more just like bookkeeping, because all of the baddies are varied and different. On the other hand, that's what makes this game really fun, is the difference of the baddies, how they're going to all be constructed, and the legitimate differences of skill paths that you can go down for your characters makes it exciting to me. It also makes me want to get everything. And I'm not sure if I want to get everything because I see the trove chests and it's one of the most beautiful pieces of storage solutions that I've ever seen, or because I like figuring out new puzzles, and I think I've figured out the different puzzles of Duster and the different paths to go on. I think I still have a few more puzzles to figure out of Stanza, but I feel with these different characters and sorting out these different characters and figuring out how they interact, I always, and I feel like a lot of people always want more, and I can't decide if that is just because it's a really fun system and it's fun to figure out how the characters work and that the characters are very well designed, or if it's a product of the limitations of tech trees, which is once you go down the path of each of the tech trees, you've figured out that path, you're less inclined to do it again because you know how that experience works. I'm inclined to think it's the former, that I just really like the characters, because I still think there's a lot of replayability that I haven't yet encountered and touched in this base Undertow game. It's a game that makes me want to play it solo so I can uncover those even more quickly, because I do enjoy it quite a bit. But as you probably know, if you've seen any of the stuff from this channel, it is something that I am very mindful of, that sentiment of wanting to get more, and not just playing with the stuff that you have. And I think there's a lot that you can do with the stuff that you just have here as well. So I'm gonna hold off. Unless you let me know in the comments what your favorite character is and who I should pick up as just like a random character pack. But that's also a mark of maybe why you should get Undertow before the original Too Many Bones, because there are so many different character packs that are out there that you can use to supplement and enhance your experience. And so once you feel like you've hit that wall and you feel like you want more character combinations, then you can go spend the $30 and get another character pack, another mouse pad filled with holes, and another chip and some dice. Really go to town on your new boning and feel good about that new experience that you've just figured out. Now, before I finish this review, and I've talked probably longer than I did in the first time, I thought I would be more succinct. I certainly am not. But we have to talk about the price point. And the price point exists because this is, like I said before, a premium product. It is. This is a small box, but it is heavy. It is filled with custom dice in beautiful trays with beautiful heavy poker chips, plastic cards, neoprene mouse pads with holes in them that I thought were silly, and I like the more that I play with, and plastic reference sheets so it can never get ruined. And for the most part, this stuff is great. It is. It's unnecessary. It's very unnecessary to the actual gameplay itself, but it is fun to have to an extent. I find with Chip Theory Games' stuff that it is generally overproduced. A lot of people like that overproduction, and I like the deluxified experience that it does give you, and I think the deluxified components help elevate what you do on the battlefield. I love especially these health tokens, which you can get the premium health tokens for, which I have never felt any desire for, because these are completely fine. People talk about getting premium health chips. These health chips are completely fine. They're just a little bit lighter than the other tokens. That's the difference. But I love this system of having your health points here, because if you're fighting someone, it's really easy to say, boom, you've knocked 2 points off. You just take the two chips and throw them down, and you can just see them get smaller and smaller as the game progresses, which also is a fun feeling. That's the sort of stuff I like. I don't need every card to be plastic and indestructible. I don't need a bunch of dice that are never rolled because they're actually just used as status tokens. You get poisoned. Okay, well, I don't put 2 poison chips on you. I put a dice that says 2 of poison on you, and then it goes down to 1 of poison later. I think Chip Theory Games, a lot of their products, and this is just me and will be my perpetual opinion, I really like a lot of the premium elements that they do, but I also know that if they had decided to do things a little less premium, a little less extravagant, over the top, it feels not gimmicky, but it just feels now part of their brand that they're stuck in. I say this for their sort of their whole catalog, because this is what they're known for. They're known for these types of cards, the PVC cards. They're known for these other elements. They're known for everything being chips and dice, and everything being neoprene. I talked about this a little bit in my Burn Cycle review. It just gets to be a little bit too much, and I can't help but think, because of all of these premium components, the price point has to be so high. And honestly, relative to the amount of stuff that you do get in this box compared to other games of a similar price point, which give you, I don't know, 12 minis and then a bunch of really crappy cardboard tokens that are also around this $100 price point, I still think the actual value for content here is potentially worth it. But there's just a part of me that can't help but thinking, okay, this is a bit silly. Could it have been a $70 game or a $60 game if we didn't include some of these elements? Oh man, if this were a $60 game, whew, I'd say buy it immediately. Value of the century, right? With it being a $100 game, I still think it is very good, but I think that decision becomes a little bit different, especially if you're a game on a budget or something along those lines. Now, if you're looking into Too Many Bones, chances are you don't game on a budget, because you know what Chip Theory is going to bring. Yeah, it's just fun to fiddle and play with, and gives a very tactile experience. And if you're looking for a tactile experience, well, hey, again, this is a very fun system to invest into. But for me, I can't help but seeing the unnecessary nature of a few elements which may make it stand out for you or may make you hesitate. I think that's all I'm going to say about Undertow. I'm going to be having a review for Automatana Shale coming out later as I refilm and edit that as well. I almost got away with that one, but you know what? I don't want to give you a horrible viewing experience, so we're going to do it again. Ultimately, where this stands for me, I've been going back and forth. I like this more than Burn Cycle. Zach, my friend Zach, who's been on the channel, he likes Burn Cycle more than this, because he likes the player powers and the robot powers a little bit more. Burn Cycle earned a seal of approval on this channel, and this earns a better seal of approval. It's almost in that seal of distinction level category. I've recently been trying to shift those things around because I think I've been too generous with seals of approval in the past, and I want to really, seal of approval has really just meant, this is my rating system if this is your first time on this channel, very similar to Dice Tower's seals of, you know, approval and excellence. It's my version of that, and it has meant this is a good game. Like, it's a good game, but there are a lot of good games out there, and so I think if I want to give something a seal of approval, it should be, if you put this into your collection, it'll deliver on the promises that it gives you, and it absolutely does that. Where it falls short of that seal of distinction level is really just for me, my own nitpicks about the price point and the variability and the sort of barriers to entry that it can present. I think the disparity between Duster and Stanza may be a really good thing for you, but I think for me, I would have liked a little bit of a shortening of that gap so that it could play as a very comparable two-player experience. And maybe if I was more of a solo player, which this could very well turn me into, that wouldn't bother me as much. So it's the complexity, it's the little fiddly bits that can make the game drag out slightly, but it's like really on the cusp of seal of distinction. And it feels like I'm just being nitpicky at this point. So you know what? I really like this game. It's going nowhere in my collection, and I want to get more of it. If that's not seal of distinction, well, I don't know what is. So there you go. A waffling review from me, but hopefully I was able to talk through my thoughts enough to give you a sense of the game and how it'll play and how it'll be different. If you want to know anything else, drop it in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer it if I can. Again, this is my only entry into the Too Many Bones system other than what I've played with my Too Many Bones fanatic friend. So I think that also hopefully is valuable from approaching it just from this base box and nothing else. You get a whole lot of content in this box. You get a bunch of heavy components in this box, and it's something that I've had a lot of fun with. I actively enjoy playing, and I actively want to get back to the table again. I just put out a video recently saying games I wish I played more. It's Too Many Bones. And the fact that it's on that list, it should speak volumes as to how enjoyable it is. But the most enjoyable part is upgrading your skills and feeling strong. Oh, one thing I should mention, which I mentioned in the other review, didn't do here, and I think this is very important, and you know what? It drops it back down to a seal of approval level. This is why I've remembered. I was getting swept up in my excitement for it. Back and forth, who knows? Maybe I'll make it's a half and half. It's right on the cusp. One thing I do wish, and I think this adds to the variability of the characters, or the potential lack of variability and both reason to dive back into them and reason not to, is that I wish that the sensible thing for your characters was to always get your skill dice, but instead, the sensible thing for your characters is usually to level up your base stats. You have your health, your attack, your defense, and your dexterity stats. And whenever you get skill points, you can either raise one of them or get a special skill dice. And it's a lot more fun to get the special skill dice, but it's a lot more practical to just raise your innate stats. So that's why I always play with the setting where you just get an extra 2 health starting at the beginning of the game. It makes it a bit easier, makes you less likely to die, and then you also don't have to spend those skill points leveling up your health when you want to put it into the fun stuff, right? It gives a little bit more flexibility. It gives you additional 1 extra skill point too that you can start with, which is Stanza. You can then at least get a song so that your focus dice can do anything at the very beginning. So yeah, that's my one gripe with the characters, but I also think it makes it more replayable because you can't get all of your skill dice, so you're more encouraged to only pursue different tech paths or whatever. So there you go. That's my last little nitpick of critique. Sorry this one was so rambly if it was. But thanks for being here. Hopefully this was helpful. Time to film the rest of the things that I need to refilm. Anyway, my name's Chris George. I do not have a catchphrase, but I do have a lot of fun playing this game of Too Many Bones, which I think is a great game. It is. I'm thrilled the system exists, and I know I'm gonna want more of it. Good thing this box is so small and compact that I probably couldn't fit more than one character in here if you kind of jam it in with all the dice trays. Okay, I'm done. Goodbye. See you later. Don't get grabbed by a tentacle unless you're into that sort of thing. So long.